So going back to our top story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had inaugurated Grameen Bharat Mahotsav 2025. Also, SBI research shows that there has been a sharp decline in poverty levels in rural and urban India, and the Government of India has committed to eradicate poverty from villages this year itself. These are takeaways from the Prime Minister's address at the inauguration of Grameen Bharat Mahotsav 2025. He had launched a campaign, he said, to guarantee basic facilities in villages. He said that our government's intentions, policies and decisions are empowering rural India. He also said that India is engaged in achieving prosperity through cooperatives. And development works in rural areas have been inspired by lessons and experiences from villages. So bottom-up approach as opposed to a top-down one. Government formulated special policies and made decisions for every section of the village. That's what the Prime Minister also said. He also spoke of how expenditure on food in rural areas has fallen in fact below 50%. Gap in consumption between urban and rural areas has also decreased. Yes, and he also spoke of the mantra of national development through rural development. So let's get perspective now. Joining us is Jayant Singh, a senior advisor with Niti Aayog. Dr. Singh, such a pleasure to have you on DD India. Building a resilient
thank you.
Rural India for a Viksit or Developed Bharat 2024 is the theme we know of the Grameen Bharat Mahotsav. How do you think it will help build a roadmap for rural transformation, the Mahotsav itself?
See, more than the Mahotsav, I think look at the entire rural sector scenario as a whole. If you see the kind of demography, if you look at the Indian demography, about 65% of our population is still residing in villages. And we tend to normally associate rural sector with agriculture. And agriculture, as we all know, is contributing less than 20% to the overall GDP. So this is definitely a challenge that how do you provide sustainable livelihood to that substantial population which is not able to derive any, substantial value addition from agriculture. At the same time, leverage the demographic dividend. Today, our median age is about 29 to 30 years. And if you look at 2030, 2035, it's going to be in the early 30s. So how do we leverage that? So we have to start looking beyond agriculture and leverage especially the MSME and the services sector. Now, just to give you some indication about the numbers, 50% of the MSME, that is the medium, small and micro enterprises, are based out of rural areas. So if we really want to address the problem of rural development, we have to target the rural population through providing them sustainable quality livelihood which can boost consumption. Now, talking about consumption in particular, this is one sector, rural sector is in fact the ray of hope as far as the larger macroeconomy is concerned, because concerns have been articulated from many quarters about quote unquote falling consumption in India, but most of that phenomenon is urban. And it is the rural sector that has been the driver thus far. Not only during COVID, but post-COVID, it is the rural demand that has really spurred. And that is quite evident from the kind of, the orientation of the FMCG sector, the white goods sector, and even the automobile sector in the rural areas. So for Viksit Bharat, the number one mantra has to be looking at the rural non-farm sector, providing employment, providing entrepreneurship, and that can happen only if the state intervenes big time as an enabler. Now, how does the state come in? State comes in by means of not only providing the social security net, which this government has done an outstanding job over the last 10 odd years, but also by improving the infrastructure. So if you look at the numbers, be it the Pradhan Mantri Grameen Sadak Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, these two, developments have been the game changers as far as the sector is concerned. And if we connect, take that further and see the kind of electrification, rural electrification that has happened, and now with the Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, we are actually looking at some sort of a paradigm shift as far as rural development is concerned. And a lot of focus is not on, the doles and the handouts. I mean, you do these safety net, they are very, very important, especially when you're tackling the bottom of the pyramid. But it is about Swavalamban. It is about, enabling people to
Empowerment, yeah.
create empowerment, livelihood for themselves. So the role of self-help group becomes very, very critical for that. Giving them access to credit is important, very, very important. So we have now, the last figures I had was about 90.8 lakh self-help groups in the country, and 9.6 lakh, crore bank linkages. The Lakpati Didi's PM keeps talking about it. Now, this is the kind of the quote unquote revolution happening at the bottom of the pyramid.
Also, Mr. Singh, if we come to some of the findings of an SBI's research report, then we see that rural and urban poverty levels have declined in India, and rural poverty in India has decreased from, say, 26% in 2012 to less than 5% in 2024. 25 crore people were lifted out of multidimensional poverty in the past 10 years, particularly in rural India. So do you think that these measures that you had mentioned are the X factor that have really tilted the scales, so to say, in the last decade?
Multidimensional poverty, in fact, there are debates going on about it, and primarily in the academic sector. But the fact is, it is a very, very wholesome way of assessing the overall quality of life and livelihood of a population, and the way we have achieved this transition. Extricating millions and millions out of the multidimensional poverty, especially in what we, pejoratively term as Bimaro state, has been nothing short of remarkable. And this has been, it's been a three-pronged approach. Of course, the social security net on the one hand, infrastructure on the other, and enabling the population through credit, number one, and also skill development. Two major initiatives that have happened, that have been undertaken by the states and the center are the National Rural Livelihood Mission, and a part of that, the RCETI, the Rural Self-Employment and Training Institutes. Now, these are a relatively recent initiative, but the results have been outstanding, both in terms of skilling, both in terms of training. And so rather than having hordes of migrants from rural areas getting into low-end construction work in urban area, which has been a perennial problem in the urban area, now we are seeing more and more trained and skilled people coming out. That is one. And the second way how we can address the power of this rural poverty has also been the direct benefit transfer, which has reduced leakages, and really you get your bang for the buck, and also you have a very, very targeted impact, number one, and the growth of digital public infrastructure, which again has been an enabler. So it's a virtuous cycle that has been set into motion by the infrastructural credit and the the improvements in public service delivery, where all the leakages have been contained very, very substantially. But still, there is a lot of work to do, because the numbers are pretty daunting. I mean, if you look at the per capita income, we still have a long way to go. But the future actually looks quite bright, with more and more FPOs coming in, market linkages coming in. The thing, there is an innate dynamism in Indian society. If you look at Indians abroad, you could see Indians everywhere. We have the ability to create wealth. The state's role is that of an enabler. It has to be a facilitator and intervene only where in a very targeted manner. So that has been the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister when he talks about maximum governance and minimum government. This is what we are actually looking at, where drone, the Lakpati, these are the kind of intervention which have a societal impact. And then, of course, there are two other critical dimensions. One is education, one is health. So the investments in public health, I think that they take almost a generation to really make their impact. It takes a generation to see that impact. So maybe 5 to 10 years from now, when you have the health indices, all these things improving, there would be a quantum leap in all the development indicators.
We'll leave it at that. Dr. Singh, thank you so much for putting into perspective for us the contribution of rural India to India's national development, and how it is expected to contribute to India becoming a developed nation by 2047. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.